Alright, hello everyone, and welcome back to our Battletech Advanced 3062 Irby Derby campaign. Today we have something a little bit different. We're going to be looking at the faction store for the Word of Blake, which is, of course, a faction not found in the vanilla game. So it's Battletech Advanced, well, only Rogue Tech related mods, things like that as well. So the usual idea with the faction store, for those of you who aren't aware, is once you've run enough contracts for a particular faction, you get your reputation up to 100, and you can go into the captain's quarters, reputation. I'm not going to show that screen right now, but just click ally, and it'll open up the faction store, at least on planets that are allied with that faction. So, we still have our usual store, weapons, ammo, equipment, and mechs. Those are determined, of course, by the planet that you're on and that planet's specialties. There's a random selection out of some bin determined by the attributes of the planet that you're on. But then the Word of Blake faction store itself does have some odd quirks to it. So we'll go through sort of tab by tab, and I'll tell you my thoughts. Basically, the weapons are weird. I'm not the biggest fan of the VSPL systems. I think that while it is true that they can do wonderful damage at close range, I'm not satisfied with their long range damage. At least if they perform better than this, it's because they do it, well, in action, not on paper, and I like to see good performance on paper before putting it into one of my mechs. So I could try a VSPL. I think you know what? Let's grab two of these. We'll throw them on to a mech, and I'll give that a shot, I suppose. The medium VSPLs are sort of an extension of that same concept, so we'll grab 4 of those. I've sold most of our mech parts in order to pay for this, by the way. Small VSPLs, 120 meter range. I mean, 2 tons on a small laser. That's basically unplayable, I think, because most of the time when you're using those sorts of what are they called? Support slots on your, well, support hardpoints on your mechs, it's because you have very minimal tonnage. So you're trying to throw in, say, 4 small lasers at half-ton a piece, instead of a single 2-ton small VSPL. I mean, just think about that. This thing would have to deal 4 times as much damage to be as weight efficient as a single small laser at the same range bracket, and I sincerely doubt that that is the case. Even the evasion pips ignored isn't as good as it looks like, because the standard small laser ignores 3 in BTA 3062. Now, the battle armor plasma rifle is something I'm intrigued by, and we're just going to pick up, I don't know, probably 20 of them, just because battle armor weapon systems do go pretty quickly, and I do want to try these out. 10 heat, of course you have 4 units of battle armor per, well, I guess battalion, or whatever you want to call it. And the +1 accuracy is very nice, 3 evasion pips ignored is very nice. The range is a little bit short, and that is an issue, especially on battle armor that is relatively not very mobile. But 4 rounds of internal ammo means that I can pound 40 heat into these people 4 times in a row if I can. That's a very good disabler, especially on mechs that are already running a little bit hot. +100 bonus damage against overheating targets doesn't tend to be that useful. If you do build heat for a long time on the Op4, they'll tend to just do a bit of a walk and slow down, not fire anything. Of course, sometimes there is the classic mech will overheat itself so much to get an ammo explosion, and that's what you hope for when you're doing this sort of damage scheme. But it's not all the time, and particularly with only 40 per alpha strike off of these guys, it's not great. Anyway, the most interesting part to me is actually the C3 Master. So this is a piece of equipment that you put on a single mech, weighs 3 tons, takes 4 slots, but it gives +1 resolve gain for all lance members, +1 accuracy for all lance members, and this is something that's incredible because C3 systems like the C3, C3I tend to give +1 accuracy if they're within the range of the C3, which is good for short range brawlers, skirmishers, but not good for snipers. This works for everybody, not just the guy carrying it. So for 3 tons and 4 slots, you can get +1 to hit on absolutely everything all the time. The +20% increased sensor range is just the same. It applies to the entire lance, not just the unit carrying it. So what you can do is you can actually stack modifiers pretty well with this. You put a C3 Master in one of your mechs, and then you shove a rangefinder or something like that onto other mechs and get the 20% increased sensor range on top of a +100 sensor range and a +20% on that, and it's the same for sight range as well. Now, this thing also does fire a tag, and it is a pretty good tag. It gives +2, it's not like the light tag that gives +1, and this fires with 3 evasion pips ignored up to 570 max range. So this is a wonderful piece of equipment. It's a strict upgrade to a tag. Of course, it carries that high price because of it, and a high tonnage and slot usage because of it, but it's pretty wonderful. We'll be coming back to it. I just want to talk through some other things as well. Ammunition, none. Well, because the weapons are all energy systems, and that makes sense. Equipment, we have our standard battle armor, contracts, other airdrops. We have a C3I, which is what I mentioned. Compare that to the C3 Master, right? So the C3I doesn't carry a tag. It does give +1 increased resolve gain for all Lance members, which is wonderful, but only +1 accuracy to enemies within the C3 radius. So whoever's carrying the C3I has to be running up front and forward, and if he gets within range, then your snipers, I guess, can use it, but I don't know. I mean, the ECM field is nice, but these are contradictory, because if I want the C3I carrier up in the enemy's front lines, he's not going to be sitting back with my sniper mechs, and if those mechs have lighter armor, they're the ones who need +1 defense against being hit, and that is only inside of that same 120 meter ECM or C3 field that is giving me the +1 to accuracy if the enemies are within it. So it's kind of, you have to field this either frontline or backline, and the flexibility is nice, but the fact that you can't get both bonuses at once is a big detriment. So we also do have an airdrop for a tank. Might look at that a little bit, but maybe. And a C3 Slave, which is basically a worse version of the C3I. Of course, it does increase the radius of the C3 system, and it is a little bit lighter and fewer slots, but that's really the only big difference there. Now, part of the most interesting thing to me is the Mech Bay. So when you're fighting the Wobbies, particularly at higher difficulties, they have variants of each one of their mechs. So for example, this is the Archangel chassis, but it's the Conditus build, and this is, you know, like a 3N or a 4P or whatever it is on unusual, like the Champion 3P or the Titan 2P, something like that. So the Conditus sort of build is a sniper build, and inside the faction store, every single one of the mechs on offer, there are no mech parts, but every single one of the Word of Blake specific mechs on offer is in a sniper configuration, and often carrying light Gauss rifles. Now, we do have something like a heavy PPC on the Titan 2P, but this is not a Word Blake specific mech, I believe. Well, I guess it is, but it's not like... the Archangel was Word of Blake developed, the Titan was not, it was contracted out. So all the ones like the Deva, the Grigori, they all have that sort of trademark Word of Blake style, and part of that is the small cockpit, and this is something I really don't like. It saves you 1 ton, gives you +1 slot available, which, I mean, that's cool if you're shoving a whole bunch of other equipment into your cockpit, but -2 accuracy on all attacks. This is higher than, it's more detrimental than you can make up for with the C3 Master, and that's 3 tons and 4 slots, granted only on 1 mech, and that's sort of where you kind of see how this is meant to work, right? Because each one of these small cockpits gives a -2 accuracy to all attacks on every individual mech. You can make up for that by stacking C3 systems like the C3 Master, and that's meant to balance it out. The only problem here is, if I'm running something that's, you know, normal, like the Champion 3P that has a regular cockpit, he'll just be firing at, what, +2 compared to the Word of Blake mechs all the time, because it doesn't have that small cockpit. And then you get into a bit of a problem too with shoving too much good equipment in. So if we take a look at the Smg Lamp, this guy is weird. So there are some really good things on here, and 2 of those are the Chameleon light polarization system, which gives +2 defense against being hit, and the null signature system, which gives +3 defense against being hit. Those are both wonderful, but look at the heat generation. 30 heat per turn on the null, and 18 on the Chameleon. That's a combined total of 48, and with double heat sinks, the standard bit of engine stored double heat sinks 60. It's just not sufficient. Even with additional heat sinks on the mech, it's so hard to get this thing to not completely burn. And keep in mind, this is a land air mech. That's what the LAM stands for. So it's going to be having its avionics on. It's going to be zipping around the map at top sprint. Sprints build heat, in addition. And what, you're supposed to fire once with everything and then run away, once run away, once run away. I mean, yes, that is a viable tactic, but it doesn't get through things nearly so quickly or efficiently as just moving a little bit slower, or taking out those +2, +3s and relying on 8 evasion pips, and having more firepower available to you because you're not burning every time you take a shot. So, cool concept. I don't think it's very good at all. I think it would be really annoying to kill, but that you'd have all the time in the world to kill it, because, I mean, yeah, an ERPP shotgun to your rear arc is going to hurt, and firing it may well shut down this mech. Which, you know, even with all the avionics in the world, if the mech is shut down, yeah, it'll have that +5 from its equipment to, you know, difficulty to hit, but yeah, no, it's just not doing it for me. And it's kind of that sort of main theme down the line, so as much fun as these mechs look like, I have some trouble with it. So take this one for example. This is the Seraph, and it's the Condidus configuration of the Seraph. You have a snub nose PPC, which is the only short range thing, but this has damage fall off, starting at 280, then 450 meters. So that 65 is not really what you're going to get at anything other than brawling range, right? We have the small cockpit. We have a TSM, which is meant to increase your walking distance and sprinting distance, and we'll get back to this later, but now all of your weapons are generating 45% more heat. 45%, is that worth it? I don't think so. You have double heat sinks again, but then you have a light Gauss, which is just, in my opinion, completely weight inefficient for the damage. And you have an LRM-10, which is not phenomenal. Second LRM-10, not phenomenal. C3I, a couple jump jets. I mean, it's a confused sort of design, right? And I said we get back to the TSM, and here's why. This TSM is made to make this mech go quicker. But you could just throw a bigger core in, right? You throw a different core in there, and I mean, sure, you're sacrificing a little bit of tonnage here, but you're in effect already sacrificing tonnage by having to offset the heat generation, well, guaranteed by the TSM. 45% extra heat is crazy. So we have extra heat sinks in here, and that, I mean, the mobility gain is not that wonderful for that. So, yeah, I don't know, it's just, I would rip these mechs apart so much they would I just should use a different chassis, is my build. Well, that's my take on it anyway. Certainly you'd have to rip off the jump jets. I mean, this thing won't even have maxed armor with this current build as well, so you'll need to find space saving somewhere. And you can't even change out the engine because this is an Omni-mech, right? And lots of these, like the Preda and the Archangel, they're Omni-mechs. And that sounds nice because of the selectability of equipment until you realize that you're hamstrung by your own electronics. Probably one of the least offensive is actually the Preda. So it's a small cockpit, but it is very quick, and that's because of the Core 270 on a 45-ton medium mech, which is quite a lot of drive to it. You also have a light Gauss, which I would probably strip off because this thing is meant to be running up close and personal and alpha striking. You have an ER medium, and you have the retractable blade, I believe. I can't find it, that's what I've been scrolling for. Does this not have that? Interesting. Huh. Most of the Wobby mechs have retractable blades, but this one does not. Anyway, and that's sort of the theme for it. I mean, there is some fun stuff, right? Like the Omega, which is a 150-ton assault mech. But even this in the base configuration, I think, is really horribly built, right? So if we look, yeah, the damage is nominally phenomenal, and the reason for that is you have 1, 2, 3 Gauss rifles and 2 LBX AC-10s. But with a mech like this, I mean, the movement is absolutely horrible. So you're going to need to maximize your armor again, and LBX autocannons are just not the most efficient way of doing damage output from the back line. What you want to do is you want to be stocking up on Ultra AC-5s. So that'll give you a better range bracket. It means you'll need less space and tonnage for your ammunition, because each bin will carry a little bit more. Granted, not if you're always firing at double all the time, but you don't necessarily have to do that. And you won't be selecting between slug and cluster. Everything is slug, but you'll be firing, you know, absolutely just dozens and dozens of rounds. So if we strip out the Gauss rifles, we throw on Ultra AC-5s on here, right? We get 5 of them. That's 10 Ultra AC-5 shots a round. it's pretty good. It's 350 damage at extreme range, with relatively well mitigated recoil and things like that. There's also very little reason, I mean, the C3 Slave is understandable, but having 2 units of Case 2 is just because this thing requires so much variety of ammunition, they can't shove it all into one location. So that was a bit more critical than I had intended it to be. I still think these are really fun and phenomenal and interesting mechs, but unfortunately I think not for me, at least not right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the equipment section. I'm tempted to pick up one of these Chameleon Polarization shields. I think that's probably the better version. 18 heat compared to 30 plus 2 defense against being hit is pretty nice, and it doesn't even take any tonnage, so I think we will pick up one of those. Very expensive, but that's what it is. And then I think we're going to go over to weapons and pick up 3 of these C3 Masters. And what we're going to do with that, so I ran, I think, 2 or 3 missions in between and then just sold off a bunch of stuff and traveled over here. What we're going to be doing with that is we're going to be installing our C3 Master on one of our mechs and looking for ideal candidates. The Ostrak is one of them because his build right now is a little bit confused. That might be something that we can work with here. So the coil has been nice, but I think it's time for a bit of a change. We do have 4 laser slots on here. You know what, let's try something. So I'd previously had this stealth armor on here, +1 maximum evasion pips, +1 evasion pips gained from movement. This is meant to feed right into the coil, so we do get more damage out because of it. And, I mean, +5 heat generated from weapons fire is not crazy, especially compared to the stealth system that we just bought. What we're going to do is, this coil has 7 tons on it, and that is, I think, a little bit too heavy for me. We're going to be taking off the ER mediums and the clan ER mediums, and we're going to be, so we have 11 tons to work with. Let's take off the stealth armor. We're going to go into some ferrofibrous here, and let's get to our support slots. Throw a C3 Master on, and now over into weapons. And this is the problem with the large VSPLs. So 9 tons, it would be our only weapon on the mech, and that's not acceptable. And the problem with the medium VSPLs, 4 tons, we could have 2 of them. It's nowhere near enough damage efficiency for us. We need to be putting out far more damage than that to make this thing really useful. And I mean, the coil was great at this, right? So even right now, we could still put the coil back in, and then, well, could we? Yeah, we could, so we'd have 3 tons left. Our heat efficiency is in the dumps, but that's just because there's this little weird thing where if you have good heat sinking but no weapons on the mech, it gets a little bit confused. Without the coil, we might not need the exchanger, and I'm thinking we get rid of the Guardian ECM, so let's get rid of those 2. And now let's go over here. Now we might be able to throw on these large VSPLs. Okay, so we're 2 tons overweight. That is not good. It's not really what I wanted. Let's put heat sink down there. Our heat efficiency now is great. I mean, we're only alpha striking for 60. Okay. Let's try something else. Let's go... sorry for that visual glitch. Let's go for all 4 of the medium VSPLs and see where that leaves us. So, okay, we're 1 ton overweight, but our heat efficiency is through the roof. So we're heat sinking 102, we're alpha striking 84. That's way overcooled. So let's get rid of one of these. Let's get rid of the other one in that torso. Might be useful. We're no longer as worried about overheating, so a missile system might actually be good for us. And if I take a look at what we've got, we do have an arc launcher. Let's see. I do have narc ammunition, so we can give that a try. Let's see. That is 2 tons. Let's get the narc launcher in there. Ton overweight. That's alright. Let's go to the ammunition. Narcs were recently buffed, by the way, because I think they were falling behind tags. And this is something that's interesting. So 2 tags won't give you additional accuracy. They won't stack. I'm not sure if narcs and tags do, so we're going to be giving that a shot. Another thing to take a look at is the Haywire Ammunition. Gives a -2, so it's like hitting them with a PPC basically, but it also drops their movement and their heat sink efficiency, which, I mean, hey, that sounds like fun to me, at least to mess with people a little bit. So let's put on some narc beacon and some narc Haywire Ammunition. Now we're 3 tons overweight. That's getting to be a bit of a problem. If we pull off 1 and 2 heat sinks, we're burning a little bit hot now. So that is less than ideal. Where can we save weight? Well, we can tear off a ton of the ammunition. We can just rely on the narc beacon, but you know what? I'm going to think about that. You guys will see it on the field. Thank you all for hanging around. See you again real soon.